Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we begin a journey of betrayal, resilience, and triumph. This is the story of a woman who, after being publicly discarded by her boss, turns the tables in the most unexpected way. With everything on the line, she uncovers a web of fraud that threatens to destroy the company she once helped build. But in the face of humiliation, she discovers her true strength, transforming her life and the company into something better. Get ready to witness a story of empowerment, integrity, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Let's dive in today. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The kind of day where the light outside seemed to reflect everything that was wrong inside. The office was bustling with the usual midday tension, the hum of muted conversations, clicking keyboards, and the occasional laugh from the break room. It was the kind of noise that had once been comforting, part of the rhythm I had grown accustomed to after 6 long years at Sterling Financial. Yet, today, it felt suffocating, oppressive almost. I remember the moment so clearly, as if it had been etched into my very bones. Jonathan Brooks, my boss for the past 6 years, stood at the head of the conference table, his voice dripping with a casual cruelty that made the air feel heavier. "You're incapable of going further," he said, his words hanging in the room like poisonous gas. "Your time here is over. Don't bother coming back tomorrow." The words were not just a dismissal. They were an execution, a final verdict delivered with the same nonchalance as if you were commenting on the weather. I felt the world tilt around me. The voices, the sounds, everything, vanishing into a muffled blur. My fork dropped, clattering against my half-eaten salad. The faces of my colleagues, scattered around the table, reflected a mix of disbelief and discomfort. Some averted their eyes, others watched with a strange kind of morbid fascination. But no one spoke. It was as if we had all been sucked into the same vortex of embarrassment and shame. I had always been the reliable one, the one who stayed late, who met every target, who quietly did the work without asking for recognition. The late nights, the sacrifices, the countless hours spent crafting presentations, working on strategies, and making sure the clients were always satisfied. I had built this company with my blood, sweat, and intelligence, and this was how it ended, over grilled salmon and small talk. I couldn't stop the bitter smile that crept onto my face. I spoke before I could think, the words slipping out of my mouth like an involuntary response. "I understand," I muttered, the words tasting sour. A part of me wanted to laugh. A bitter, hollow laugh, because deep down, I knew this moment had been coming for a long time. It wasn't just the layoffs or the increasing demands. It wasn't even the whispers I'd overheard in the hallway, or the way Jonathan had slowly started to favor Jessica, the new girl fresh out of business school, whose father had connections that could make or break deals. No, it was the way Jonathan had always belittled me, always kept me in the shadows, never giving me the credit I deserved, never acknowledging the part one had played in the company's success. He had built his empire on my expertise while keeping me small, invisible. And then, there was the envelope sitting in my desk drawer. My insurance policy. I had been preparing for this day long before Jonathan had decided I was no longer of value. For months, I had been quietly gathering evidence, tracking discrepancies, taking notes, digging into financial records, and what I had found, what I had discovered about Jonathan's dealings, about the missing funds and the creative accounting, was enough to bring his whole world crumbling down. "Clara will handle your clients starting tomorrow," Jonathan continued, oblivious to the storm that was brewing within me. "You can clear out your desk this afternoon." His words were final, almost cold. I heard them but didn't listen. My mind was already racing through the next steps, planning how I would take control of the situation. The lunch ended with uncomfortable murmurs and the scraping of chairs. But it felt like I was moving in slow motion, detached from everything around me. As I gathered my things and made my way out of the conference room, I caught a glimpse of Marcus, one of my colleagues, waiting for me in the hallway. He looked genuinely concerned. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice low. "That was completely unprofessional. We all know what you've done for this company. I straightened my back, forcing a smile. Thank you, Marcus, I replied. Sometimes endings are actually beginnings in disguise. Back at my desk, I moved mechanically, collecting my personal items while surreptitiously sending myself key files, client presentations, training materials, process documents, everything I had worked on, everything Jonathan had taken credit for, was now mine to keep. As I reached into my bottom drawer, my fingers brushed against the thick manila envelope. I had been waiting for this moment. And now it had arrived. I didn't need to look at it again to know what it contained. The evidence was irrefutable. Jonathan had been siphoning client funds into offshore accounts. His schemes were more elaborate than I had ever imagined. But I had documented everything, leaving nothing to chance. In that moment, as I slipped the envelope into my bag and walked out of the office for the last time, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at Jonathan for firing me in such a humiliating way. No, this was about something bigger, about justice. And perhaps, it was about something more. A chance to build something better. From the ashes of the empire Jonathan had destroyed. As I left the office building, the warm afternoon sun seemed to shine brighter than it ever had before. I could feel the weight of the past 6 years lifting off my shoulders. This was just the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but my life was about to change in ways I couldn't have imagined. The days following my departure from Sterling Financial felt like a strange dream. I spent most of my time at home, going over every detail of the evidence I had gathered and making meticulous plans. I had been fired, yes, but in many ways, I felt liberated. The weight that had pressed down on me for so long, those years of silent resentment, of overlooked hard work, was finally lifting. I had a purpose now. A direction that I hadn't fully realized I'd needed until that very moment. The phone call came late one evening. Just as the last traces of sunlight disappeared from the sky. The number on the screen was familiar. Alex. It had been a while since we had last spoken. And I wasn't sure what prompted him to call. But I answered. Olivia. It's been ages. His voice was warm, nostalgic even, as if we were old friends catching up. Yeah, it's been too long, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel a swell of emotion rising. How's everything with you? Alex had inherited his father's venture capital firm after his sudden passing. He was doing well, making waves in the industry, and I had always admired his tenacity. His ability to see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. But I knew there was something more to the call. I've heard some things about Sterling Financial. About Jonathan. Alex's voice grew more serious. What's going on, Olivia? I paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. It's complicated, I said, feeling the tension in my chest tighten. But I think I might need your help. The conversation that followed was one I hadn't expected. I explained everything, my termination, the fraud I had uncovered, and the plan that had begun to form in my mind. I knew that the company wasn't just Jonathan's personal playground. It had real potential, clients who trusted it, and a legacy that deserved to be salvaged. The more I spoke, the clearer the plan became. I want to buy out Sterling Financial, I said, my voice firm. But I need your help to make it happen. We can offer Jonathan a way out. A chance to avoid the fallout from his actions. Alex was quiet for a moment, clearly processing what I had just proposed. Finally, he spoke. You want me to help you buy the company. Not just buy it. Take control of it. What makes you think Jonathan will sell? He'll sell, I said, confidence flooding my words. Because I have something he doesn't want anyone to see. I paused, knowing how risky it sounded. I have evidence of fraud. Proof of everything. Missing funds. Offshore accounts. He won't be able to walk away from this. But he will if we approach him with the right offer. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Alex spoke. You're sure about this? I took a deep breath. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. After hanging up the phone, I felt a sense of clarity that had been missing for so long. This wasn't just about taking down Jonathan. It wasn't about revenge. This was about taking control. About building something better for the clients who had been left behind and for the employees who had been pushed aside. I was going to show them that they had trusted the wrong person to lead. I was going to do it for all of them. The next morning, I began preparing the financial documents, organizing everything I had learned about Jonathan's deceptive practices. I needed a strategy, something that would put me in the driver's seat without appearing too eager. I wasn't just going to take over the company for the sake of it. No, this was bigger than that. I was going to create something new. Something that would stand on its own, built on values Jonathan had never understood. I had made my decision. There was no turning back. I wasn't going to just be the woman who had been pushed out. I was going to be the one who came back. Stronger, smarter, and more capable than anyone had ever believed. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. What had started as a moment of humiliation and loss was quickly transforming into a powerful new direction. The weight of uncertainty that had once kept me tethered to my old life at Sterling Financial was gone, replaced with a clarity I hadn't known was possible. I was no longer the sidelined employee, the one who worked tirelessly without recognition. I was on the verge of something much bigger. I threw myself into the task of rebuilding, not just for myself, but for the clients, for the employees, and for everyone who had been affected by Jonathan Brooks's mismanagement. Every morning, I spent hours reviewing the financial documents I had painstakingly gathered during my time at Sterling. The discrepancies in the client accounts had become clearer with each passing day. And as I pieced everything together, the enormity of Jonathan's fraudulent actions became more apparent. The scope of his dishonesty, the years of manipulation, and the way he had taken advantage of his clients. It was more than just business misconduct. It was betrayal on a deeply personal level. I was ready to take the next step. I reached out to Alex again. And this time, we discussed the finer details of the plan. The venture capital firm was on board, but they needed more information before committing to the buyout. It was time to present the evidence that Jonathan would never see coming. We met the following week in a sleek downtown office building, where Alex's firm had its headquarters. The contrast to the corporate environment I'd come from at Sterling was jarring. Where I had once sat in a dimly lit, tired meeting room, I now found myself surrounded by polished wood, glass walls, and sleek, modern furniture. It was everything that Sterling had never been: open, transparent, and fresh. Alex greeted me with a smile and a handshake. "We're ready to move forward," he said, his voice filled with confidence. "We've run the numbers, Olivia, and based on what you've shown us, we believe there's a solid opportunity here." I sat down, placing the stack of documents in front of me. The evidence was irrefutable: every financial statement, every missing dollar, every offshore transaction tied directly to Jonathan's hands. The shell companies, the illegal transfers, the manipulation of client funds, it was all laid out in black and white. "We need to act fast," I said, my voice steady despite the anticipation building in my chest. "Jonathan is desperate. I can feel it. He's already looking for a way out. If we move quickly enough, we can buy the company before he has a chance to cover his tracks or disappear." Alex nodded. "We've got your back, but we need to be careful. We don't want to make it obvious that we're playing a game of leverage here. This needs to look like a legitimate acquisition." As we finalized the plan, I realized just how much this moment meant. It wasn't just about buying a company. It was about proving that I could do it, that I was more than the sum of my past mistakes. More than the woman who had been discarded and underestimated. This was my chance to show everyone, especially Jonathan, that the world didn't revolve around people like him. There was more to business than ego and manipulation. The following days were a blur. We sent the offer to Jonathan, and I waited, pacing the floors of my apartment as the hours stretched on. I knew Jonathan wouldn't respond immediately. He'd never liked the idea of anyone having power over him. But I also knew that he didn't have much choice. He had to sell. He had to get out before everything came crashing down. And so, I waited. The waiting was almost unbearable, knowing that everything I had worked for, All the evidence I had uncovered would soon come to a head. But even as the anticipation gnawed at me, I couldn't shake the sense that this was only the beginning of a much larger journey. The battle ahead would be difficult, but it was one I had already decided to fight, no matter the cost. As the final moments approached, I stood in the office, taking a moment to absorb everything that had brought me here. The transformation, not just of the company, but of myself, was undeniable. I had gone from a woman dismissed with cold indifference to the owner of Sterling Financial, now rebranded as Integrity Wealth Partners. The weight of responsibility had shifted, and though it was heavy, it felt earned, deserved. Jonathan Brooks had thought he could break me. He had thought he could humiliate me and discard me like a useless pawn. But in doing so, he had unknowingly paved the way for my greatest triumph. The real victory wasn't just the takeover, or the satisfaction of watching him squirm. It was the realization that I had built something that would stand for more than just financial gain. Integrity, transparency, and trust would guide this new chapter. As the press conference ended, and the last guests began to file out, I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the city. It was a beautiful evening. The sky painted in hues of orange and pink. The city felt different now. My city. I had worked so hard, endured so much, and I was finally living up to the person I had always hoped I could be. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was more than enough. Thank you for everything. A voice broke my reverie. I turned to see Jessica, a new ally, standing by the door. She had been with me every step of the way. And now, we were both part of something greater. I smiled. The real work is just beginning. But we're ready. And just like that, the future had begun.